Hey, what's going on, everybody? We are here live for the 2021 NHL expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken. I'm Jeremy Case, host of Crossbars and Zambonis. I'm here with my good friend Jake Silva, live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Jake, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Wow, what an exciting day it is for everybody in the city of Seattle, and not to mention all of the state of Washington, just to introduce and also to bring to life and release the Kraken out of the waters, as the Seattle Kraken will officially become the 32nd NHL franchise. It's such an exciting night to just see who the Kraken are going to pick and who's going to be now leading the Kraken to their future of being maybe one of the toughest teams in the Pacific Division.
Absolutely. And with that, right now, if you're watching the draft right now, Gary Bettman is on stage live addressing the crowd of what is to become here in the draft. Let's see if we can have just a little listen in. I don't think we can hear that. Sorry, folks. We seem to be having a little bit of technical difficulties right now. We're trying to get into the audio here. Let's see. I mean, it's very minuscule at the best.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of give you a live play-by-play, I guess, of what's going on right now. Right now, they've handed it over to the analysts that are going on right now. And Jake, I've said it before, and I talked a little bit with Darian this morning. We said that, and I was specifically talking about don't expect any hot picks in this expansion draft. From what it seems like this team is going to not going to be really any sexy picks. Your PK Subans, your Carey Prices, your Vladimir Tarasenko's, your Gabriel Landeskog's, they're not coming to Seattle. This is not what's going to be happening. Just because of the fact that the Seattle Kraken were very, very aware that a lot of teams were trying to dump off some maybe unwanted salary to Seattle and trying to stick them with long-term contracts and try to handcuff them to players. And as we know, Ron Francis is a little bit smarter than that. I mean, I think quite strongly here we're going to see a model more similar to the Carolina Hurricanes than we are the Las Vegas Golden Knights with what Ron Francis has
Yeah.
built. I mean, if you look at the
No,
Carolina, there's a couple of known names on that roster, but it's a lot of strong depth guys, really, quite honestly.
yeah. No, I agree, and it's kind of interesting because you think of, in the last previous years, and how much that the NHL, the league itself, has grown in the last couple of years, and to the point where we've had newer franchises and even some franchises that originated, then got moved out. As we remember the time when the Atlanta Thrashers became a franchise, and then all of a sudden they relocated to Winnipeg to bring him back and reviving the Winnipeg Jets. But my biggest anticipation of this is, you even think about the last expansion draft with the Vegas Golden Knights. They knew right then and there, after the Pittsburgh Penguins won their second straight Stanley Cup championship, that the way that they were kind of manning everything between Matt Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury, they were looking at it as Marc-Andre Fleury is the key. He's the piece. He's the one that's going to, at the very least, give them veteran experience, leadership, and not to mention bring in some of the best moments that he has, to where this has really grown to what Vegas as a franchise has said to be one of the most successful franchises in the first 4 years, going into year 5. So for the Seattle Kraken, I agree with you. I do not think we're going to see big time superstars. You'd be lucky enough if you're able to take on maybe one of those contracts, but a guy who maybe had suffered an injury in the past season, maybe someone that just needed a new change of scenery, and maybe a scenery that's brand spanking new that hasn't made its mark yet. And I think that's maybe one of the best experiences a player could ever ask for, because like I mentioned, there were some names that were on there as there were a bunch of mock drafts happening. But the one name, don't be surprised about taking, is Jason Zucker. The reason I say this is because look at what Jonathan Marchessault did in his very first year with the Vegas Golden Knights out of the Florida Panthers. The fact that he came in to a franchise brand spanking new, but had a lot of criticism because of his size, because of his skill, and how he was really going to mesh. And then turns out he was a 30-plus goal guy the first year. Like, how does that happen?
Hold on, Jake. Hold on. We're getting the first pick right now if you're watching the draft. Jeremy Lauzon is the first pick for the Seattle Kraken for the Boston Bruins, a defenseman. Wow, nice pick. This was actually one of my top 5 prediction depth picks that I had in my video. I think he's like I said, he's a lot of these players, like you said, Jake, are going to be on teams that had a lot of big time names on them that wouldn't allow these players to fulfill their full potential because they had bigger names in front of them in those lines. And Jeremy Lauzon is one of those players. Guy he's just a great defenseman. And what a great pick for the Kraken. Great way, like I told you, and we also told you too, Ron Francis. He starts from the defense and works his way up from the net forward. And I'm not really surprised by this pick.
Yeah, neither am I. And you know what, Jeremy Lauzon, he comes in from an organization that, if you think of the last couple defensemen that the Boston Bruins had before the departure of Zdeno Chara, after all those years since winning the Stanley Cup in 2011, Jeremy Lauzon ended up picking it up from guys of two-way players like Torrey Krug before going to St. Louis, and Brandon Carlo, who were one of their best defensive players, and Charlie McAvoy. I would anticipate that Jeremy Lauzon and what he brings to the table on the defensive side, even at his age and by his skill set, he's going to be a guy that may grow to be a shutdown defenseman, and something that Seattle is focusing in on.
Absolutely. Big guy. He skates really well. He moves really fast for his size, but he's also a very physical defenseman. And so that's something that a lot of teams wish they could have, and that's why I was kind of disappointed when the Golden Knights traded away Cody Glass, because they knew. I know even just a little bit more, and maybe people here in the Pacific Northwest also know a little bit something about Cody Glass, because he did play for the Portland Winterhawks, and I've watched him before, and I know this guy has a ton of potential, and I think the Knights made that move because they saw what was going to happen.
Yeah.
It would be nothing for Cody Glass to stay in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, and I think the unfortunate part is for Cody Glass, because you have to imagine by the third year that the Golden Knights had started their season, this was all about revamping their farm system, and that was bringing in guys like Cody Glass, like Nick Hague, and so many others, and even Dylan Coghlan, from what I was told, one of the hardest shooters in the minor leagues. And so when you think of a guy like Cody Glass, who has a lot of potential in him, could be a lethal scorer in the near future, the problem of it was even during he was getting roughed up by a lot of these big time players. And that was something that, as usual, as a rookie, you anticipate it, you expect it. But the way it was kind of come and go type of thing, that's where the Golden Knights were kind of disappointed of the way that it was kind of looking at that, not in his side, but the process itself. And you figure you give him to a team that Nashville, they right now are probably looking for a new fresh eyes and new fresh players, whatever they can get to at least ensure their farm system's protected. So guys like Cody Glass, it's a new town, new scenery, and sometimes even jolts these players to where they can be better than where they were before. I mean, look at Nick Suzuki in Montreal. The fact that he came up and he's gelling with Cole Caulfield. So
Absolutely.
Nick Suzuki, Cody Glass, and Eric Brandstrom, all three of their tops, all gone to different places. So it'll be interesting.
With that being said, Jake, we have had the second and third picks roll in. Second pick from the Buffalo Sabres defenseman Bill Howden. Third pick from defenseman from the Detroit Red Wings is Dennis Kolowski. So those are the number 2 and 3 picks. Again, defenseman, first 3 picks. It's really not surprising. Untapped potential is going to be it's a great start. It's a great start right here for the Seattle Kraken here.
Yeah.
And it's not really surprising though, just to say the least.
Yeah, so it makes me feel like, Ron Francis, and for him, not only just to play, but to have a guy who has, seen the game and has, analyzed it. He's defensive minded. So I think as, you kind of look into the blueprints of the Seattle Kraken, they want to be a very defensive team. Look at the teams in the Pacific Division that are lethal scorers. The Vegas Golden Knights, for one. Some may argue and anticipate the Edmonton Oilers when they get red hot. And, even for a couple of other teams out there, I know right now, as I mentioned, watch out for the LA Kings, because that could be a team that's revamping their offense after what they played out like, and could be another team that's looking to score more goals than where they were as a team last year.
Actually, I'm sorry. I name botch on the Buffaloes. It's William Borgen. I apologize. William Borgen is the second pick, and then Dennis Kolowski as well. I mean, William Borgen. I mean, guy's fairly young. He's 24 years old. He came from the Buffalo Sabres. He was the 92nd overall pick in the 2015 NHL entry draft. So, I mean, if you look at over his overall career, not really great stats, honestly, statistically, but there's something in there. There are a lot of young guys, and not only that, you got to keep in mind too, some of these picks are going to be used as trade pieces and to move for other different players too. So just because the Kraken select them does not necessarily mean that they are going to be on this team. I mean, we saw how much wheeling and dealing Vegas did after they drafted their team. They did a lot of wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, there were a couple of guys that even, you think of even the hottest names like Vadim Shapachov at one point, because he was listed as maybe one of the most lethal Russian scorers outside of guys like Nikita Kucherov and even Evgeny Kuznetsov, a guy that, could really be utilized as one of the, top scorer in this league. But the fact that he made the comments that he made about Las Vegas not truly being set and seen as a hockey town kind of set the fuel to fire for, the team and even for the players representing. So, and then of course, even guys like Mark Methot, who they think of as a good defenseman, a good guy that can come in and plug in. They used him as trade bait and going and using him, getting some better picks, even getting some better players in the middle of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle ends up making those moves where they might sneak in a little something here and there.
And then as far as Denise Cholowski goes, I mean, he's from British Columbia, 23 years old, young guy again, 20th overall pick in the 2016 draft. I mean, his career points are pretty okay. Last year not really doing much, but throughout his career, 10 goals, 17 assists, 27 points, minus 47. But there's something there. There's something to be said there for a young Detroit team, and maybe using some of the insight of Stevie Y, Steve Yzerman. Yzerman doesn't draft people unless he sees potential in them.
Yeah, and you think of those two organizations themselves, and what's so different about it is the Detroit Red Wings have a vision. They have a vision for the future, and what Steve Yzerman really has been looking into is making this team in the next 5 years to being back on the map as being one of the most competitive teams in the NHL. They hadn't been like that in a while, but all it starts with their key piece in Dylan Larkin as their captain, and then to fill up with guys like Fabula, even Zadina, and a lot more that you can add in the mix. But Buffalo, a lot of these young kids that they get from drafts, sometimes are either they lost the potential, didn't really, grab their, kind of grab their
And
expectations.
with that being said, Jake, we got the first selection from the Florida Panthers. Chris Driedger got selected as goalie, which we kind of already knew. And he's walking out on stage right now with the new Seattle Kraken jersey that will be on sale September 15th. You can grab that. Looks pretty nice, man. Pretty sharp looking jersey. Chris Driedger is there live in Seattle, and he's giving his little interview. So
Oh
I
man.
solid pick at goaltender, man. Florida did not do too bad last year compared to previous years. Got into the playoffs. Yes, they got bounced by the Lightning in the first round, but they took it to 7 games, and they really gave the Lightning all they could handle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I couldn't have agreed with you more. I mean, the Florida Panthers. You have to think about the year before this past season. I mean, it was the first year Sergei Bobrovsky came in on that 7-year contract that he signed, and of course, a lot of the pressure was going to be on Bobrovsky. But then by next year, he got better. He got a little better. But the other part of that is the forwards started to get more aggressive on all their offensive schematics, and then not to mention the defense themselves. I know that there were some talks with Keith Yandel and a couple others, but Aaron Ekblad and a couple of them, they really stepped themselves up this year. So Chris Strider, what I really, really like about this underrated pick is think of the record he held, but not to mention the goals against average. It may not look as sexy, but here's the deal. You get a kid that's still young at age who you could build a future around, and a guy that's going to continue to learn each start, each night. And he also learned from one of the best goaltenders in Sergei Bobrovsky. So that brings a little veteran presence to it, but also some really good potentiality. And the fact that he has an extension with this team kind of tells you this could be potentially their guy moving forward.
And with that being said, our first forward has been selected for the Montreal Canadiens. Cale Fleury got selected. They announced him as a forward. Hockey Reference has him as a defenseman. The draft said he was a forward. So, but overall, 87th overall pick, 22 years old, out of Calgary, Alberta. We saw what Cale Fleury was kind of about in the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, he really didn't get much playing time, but young guy, a lot of upside to that, a lot of years on him.
Yeah, there's a lot more years on Cale Fleury, and just kind of going by his resume, he's a guy that when you plug him into the lineup, and then not to mention grow with this team, he's going to be guy. I think he holds some tangibles here and there. He's a guy that really does utilize a little of that speed, and then not to mention good stick handles. I think you might see some good stuff out of Cale Fleury when he has those open opportunities moving forward. So, and believe it or not, don't want to make it a spoiler alert, but that may not be the only Fleury we might see, because
Yeah.
who knows? There may be some other things up into the works, but we'll only wait and see until however this expansion draft is going to play out. But I think
Right
Cale
now,
Fleury, that could be a good one.
right now they're about to announce the pick from the Ottawa Senators, who is up next. I'm not sure who they have out on stage. They selected Joey Daccord, Joey Daccord, excuse me, another goaltender from the Ottawa Senators, another good, solid option at goaltender.
Yeah, Joey Decord. I mean, you're talking about another one of these youngsters, and even if you're relying on Chris Dreider to be your centerpiece for this Seattle Kraken team, I think Joey Decord is going to come in, and he's going to be a guy that's going to utilize more depth at the goaltender position. A very excellent choice when it comes to backup. I mean, you have to think about what Ottawa did with Matt Murray and a couple of others in their, on their roster, and this was a guy that I think, even if bouncing back and forth, he's got some tangibles in there that the more and more he works day in and day out, could be a guy that fills in whether Dreiger gets hurt or maybe there's something else in the middle of it. But I think this was a really good, smart pick by Ron Francis to make that happen and give more depth in the goaltender position.
And with that, the Tampa Bay Lightning selection has happened. Yanni Gourde gets selected by the Tampa Bay Lightning, a first center for the Seattle Kraken, 5'9", 172 pounds. He is undrafted, from what it looks like. Undrafted from the Quebec. So, but I mean, last year, 36 points, 17 goals, 19 assists. Overall in his whole career, 187 points, 107 assists, 80 goals. I mean, that's some pretty solid offensive production.
Yeah, you got to think of Yanni Gourde and what we've seen in the last couple of years. And believe it or not, I mean, this is a guy who was such an underrated, undrafted player, and a guy that the Tampa Bay Lightning, when they went onto the stretch of winning 2 Stanley Cups back to back, this was a guy that was opening up those holes at the center position and utilizing it for his wingers to go and shoot goals. I mean, you think of Andres Palat, you got to think of guys like Braden Point and others. I mean, this is a guy that I think Seattle is really going to love watching him create open space, get lethal on the offense, and be very, very quick. Very, very valuable move by Ron Francis.
And now we are cutting to the Pike Place Market here. I mean, they're just kind of just showing the Pike Place Market, which is a very awesome attraction. If you ever come out to Seattle, you ought to go see that. It's pretty insane. But yeah, these are pretty solid picks here, but we just don't know who's all going to stay and who's going to go. I mean, we got another pick, and we got another selection. Jared McCann from the Toronto Maple Leafs gets selected.
Yeah, I heard a lot of news when it surrounded about Jared McCann, with the fact that the Pittsburgh Penguins were willing to trade him to the Toronto Maple Leafs earlier, and there were some reasons for that, because obviously the Pittsburgh Penguins didn't want to lose McCann for nothing. So instead, they give him over to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were willing to cough up some draft picks so that it protected the future for the Penguins moving forward, knowing you're going to have some of those forwards that are going to be right there at the end of their prime. But Jared McCann, I can say, big-time veteran experience, a guy who's won 2 Stanley Cups as well. This is a guy that's really going to give you that veteran leadership as well. When you're a guy that needs to create open spacing and get the team rolling, even with him and Yanni Gourde, those are 2 explosive guys that I think can really make it happen.
Yeah, it'd be a great top 2-line center for the Seattle Kraken. Overall in his career, 155 points, 89 assists, 66 goals. He was the 24th overall pick in the 2014 NHL entry draft. He's only 25, so I mean, has not reached his full potential. as far as we can see yet. So,
Yeah,
this is looking pretty solid. It might not look that way right now to the eye, but it's seeming pretty solid to me.
yeah, I mean, you look at how solid that this looks right now. The fact that they took defensemen first and on their picks, and then not to mention going to goaltender and then moving to forward. Something tells me about Ron Francis's plan, how he basically plans to set this lineup. This is going to be a defensive first team, almost kind of like some certain teams you look at, like the Dallas Stars, for one, is a very good defensive minded team. And even, even a parts to, the Minnesota Wild that we saw this past year. So I think that Seattle, they're going to manhandle with defense first. And then you're going to get experienced guys like Jared McCann and Yanni Gourde that are going to be your juice for the offense to now say, okay, they'll be shut down from that position. Now we're going to get ready to be lethal scorers. So I think this is the kind of the smart way of really building this team up.
Absolutely. With that being said, the draft is currently on a break. We are going to take a little bit of a break. Stay with us, guys. We will be back in just a few minutes.
What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
But I know that's just in my mind. I know everything is just in my mind. Do you really want to be famous? Do you really want to be a superstar? Do you really want to get dangerous? Do you even know where the groupies are? Bitches out here be-
Welcome to Hammer's house.
And with that being said, make sure you be able to support all of our shows here on the Spotlight Sports Network here. Make sure you guys go ahead, follow us all on social medias, give us likes, subscribes, all of that to be up on the latest content for the Spotlight Sports Network as we continue on with our coverage here in the NHL expansion draft. Wow, so far, not really too surprising picks. No shockers, like I said, Jake, I don't think there's going to be a pick in this entire draft that's going to flip the NHL world on its head here. I just think it's going to be just solid players and trade, maybe a lot of trade pieces, really. I had an estimate that we're probably not even going to really see the actual team that the Kraken put on the ice probably until mid-August or when training camp starts.
Well, and I think that's kind of the whole plan, right? The fact that, when we saw what the Vegas Golden Knights did with the fact that they had their top guys that they selected, and that was truly what was going to be, the whole focal point. So I think that what the Seattle Kraken are doing right now, and what I think is the smartest thing Ron Francis can do, is build for the future. So I think that at the end of the day, you see the average age right now. I know it's only about 5-6 picks, but these guys are right there in their mid-20s and close to being in, their early 30s. These are guys that you are willing to build around, and then come Friday when you have the NHL draft, you're going to start to now have these guys come in. Whoever they have as the number 2 selected overall pick is going to be a guy that you're going to build around these young core guys. And this is, and their game may not have been as good or as great in their previous clubhouses, but their games are only going to get better the more and more they see ice time. So I think that was what was smart for Ron Francis in making those picks so far.
And we have another pick with that in, Morgan Geekie from the Carolina Hurricanes. He played, it seems like he won the, he played here in the state of Washington for his junior hockey career. Overall in his career, not that great. Six goals, 7 assists, 13 points. But again, 23 years old. He was the 67th overall pick. He's got that Carolina connection with Ron Francis. That kind of shined through there.
Well, not only that, but the fact of it, but he's coming home. The fact that he's coming here into Washington, and a guy that, 23 years old, it may not look as great, but this is a guy that I think Ron Francis has had an eye on for quite some time, and figured if he was going to fall right into his lap of taking him as that next pick in the expansion draft, it was going to be this kid, Morgan Geekie. Because I think at the end of it, he's going to be another kid they're going to really surround some good pieces with, and he's going to grow and thrive. So something I think Ron Francis really looks at in his scouting report and says, listen, I've seen this kid in Carolina, in Raleigh, and I think this kid could really fit our system if we bring him here into Seattle. And no better place than being back home in Washington for him.
And with that being said, another pick just came in here. Defenseman Gavin Bayruther from the Columbus Blue Jackets, 27 years old. He's a pretty prolific offensive defenseman. Kind of went with a little bit of veteranship there, but you need those guys to lead your locker room.
Yeah, you got to kind of have a guy that's going to lead the locker room. I mean, you look at some of these two-way forwards that, they play both ends. I mean, we look at, even free agents like Tony DeAngelo, and even for guys like Nate Schmidt and a couple of others I can name off the top of my head. But this is a guy that comes out of a Columbus system that had two of one of the best defensemen, Zach Werenski and Seth Jones. But ultimately, you kind of want to have one or two of those offensive defensemen there, the ones that are willing to, at the very least, kind of throw a little pressure on to the goal, to the defense on the opposing side, and even force, shots even from the backside. So I think this kid's going to really do well. 27 years old. He has that experience with those defensive guys, as I mentioned, but you kind of have to have that consistency there and maybe have one or two of those two-way defensemen.
Yeah, I really like how they're structuring this expansion draft. I mean, as we all know, the Kraken submitted their list for their picks this morning around 10 a.m. So they're just kind of rattling off these picks here, and I really like that. Next pick up from the New Jersey Devils was Nathan Bastian, right winger out of New Jersey. He was the 41st overall pick in the 2016 draft. Again, 23 years old. Young guy, probably was behind Subban over there in that line. Overall, 7 assists, 6 goals, 13 points in his whole entire career. Still a young guy. Got a lot of potential there. 6'4", 207 pounds, pretty big dude.
Oh, yeah, pretty big kid indeed. And, Nathan Bastian, you look at how young that New Jersey Devils team looked like with guys like Jack Hughes, even Nico Hischier and a couple of them. I think being put, he's still fresh, still a young body, but is even a guy that even at his size at 6'4", that's going to be quite a lethal hockey player, a guy that may be an underrated small name, but will not be small for long. The more and more you give him ice time, and is a guy that I think comes in out of a New Jersey system that's young, that's only refreshing it, and is is kind of brand new. But coming into a Seattle organization like this might be a guy that I think could be a red hot target by the time the season starts.
And with that, probably one of the hottest picks announced just now for the New York Islanders. The Seattle Kraken select Jordan Eberle. Absolute veteran leadership there with the right wing. I mean, overall, he was drafted in the 2008. He's 2008 entry draft. He's 31 years old. Probably kind of on the back nine of his career here. Overall, 551 points, career points. Almost close to that silver stick at 779 NHL games played, 241 goals, 310 assists. I mean, do we really need to say more about this pick? Great veteran pick.
I don't think there's really much more that you could definitely say about Jordan Eberle. I mean, that's a guy that, and that's a guy right there that, you look at the New York Islanders and the success that they've had under Barry Trotz. And Barry Trotz is a very, a lot of people could say he's offensive minded, but don't mistake the fact that this is also a guy that's defensive minded as well. But when you look at Jordan Eberle and some of those forwards there in New York, like Josh Bailey and a couple others, that was quite a lethal scoring team. And I really love this pick because the fact of you're going to get one lethal scorer who understands the system and is also going to help to, really kind of pave the way for some of these young forwards. And then, like we mentioned before, Jared McCann and also Yanni Gourde. And Yanni Gourde, very familiar with him, just played against him in the Eastern Conference Finals. So right. I truly think that Jordan Eberle is going to be that guy. I mean, think of it this way. When the Vegas Golden Knights picked up James Neal at that time, he was kind of that beacon as a guy to start off the scoring end. And so I kind of see the same look for Jordan Eberle, maybe a little better, but that's a really valuable pick right there. Yeah,
and again, another team that gave the Lightning all they could handle. Again, another one of those teams. Next pick, the Seattle Kraken select Colin Blackwell for the New York Rangers. Another center, 5'9", 190 pounds. He was the 194th overall pick in the 2011 NHL entry draft, which the 7th round, which is a round that no longer exists in the NHL draft. But he's 28, a little bit of a veteran leadership. Really, like. He was in a bunch of teams where he wasn't really able to shine because there were bigger names in front of him. His first 2 years are with Nashville, and he spent a lot of time working his way up into the NHL. And then when he got up, got up with Nashville in 2018, 2019, a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals, and then was with Nashville again and had a lot of big names on those two Nashville teams. And then again with the New York Rangers, a lot of big names on that team too. So a lot of big names on that team. And so, again, probably one of those diamonds in the rough that you're going to kind of see emerge and be a pretty solid, prolific point scorer.
Yeah, and don't forget this, the fact that, he was right behind some of the bigger names, whether it was in Nashville or whether it was down there in MSG with the New York Rangers. Sometimes guys like that learn from some of the top best up front from them could always flourish whenever they get the opportunities of going into a new team that's kind of put them on the spotlight, really examine their play. And if they love that style, that's kind of something that he might bring to the table with the Seattle Kraken. And so I thought this could be a really good, valuable pick moving forward. Another guy with some veteran experience as well. And even a guy that some guys might have fun learning some of the things in the game, and could definitely be very lethal when it comes to having the experience, and even a guy that's willing to open up the ice for some of these young kids.
So far, if you're watching the expansion draft as well, we've seen both the home and the away jerseys being displayed for the Seattle Kraken. I'm not going to lie, Jake. I mean, these jerseys are pretty sharp, man. They're pretty sharp. I mean, obviously in the homes, they're the darker jerseys, with that dark blue with the big giant S coming down as a centerpiece off of it. Some other colors, alternate colors being displayed on the sleeves and on the bottom of the trim. And then for the road jersey, it's just a solid white with the big S down the chest. And then obviously the anchors with the Space Needle engraved into them are on the shoulder side pieces. Really, really solid jerseys. I can't wait to get my hands on one of them, to be honest with you. I mean, just wow, really great stuff to talk about. But yeah, some surprising picks, some picks that some people thought they were going to go with, and some that weren't really that surprising that the Kraken have selected overall. I mean, and if you're watching the draft too, they've done some pretty corny things with it. I mean, they're throwing fish around, they're digging picks out of fish.
I can tell you this: when the Vegas fish.
I'm sorry, Jake. What was that? I apologize. We kind of lost you there for a minute. It seems like we are having a little bit of technical difficulties with Jake here. He might be in a difficult area there. But, I mean, yeah, if you're watching the draft, it's kind of some corny stuff going on there. I mean, they're throwing fish around. They're digging picks out of fish. They're having the octopus make a pick. But it's also an event. It's also a thing. So, I mean, kind of what do you expect about it? Quite honestly, but it's been an awesome thing so far. They're just kind of just rattling off, trying to get through it, and it not making it such a painstaking process because the NHL has known. And it looks like we lost Jake here for a minute. Jake, hop on if you can, man, again. But it seems like the NHL and everybody has known that there's been a ton of buildup leading up to this draft, and they kind of just want to get the picks over with, just kind of rattle them off, see what they're going to do. And I love that about this draft. Now we're coming back into the draft here. We're seeing a whole bunch of people in the Puget Sound there, just kind of having a little draft party, which is completely awesome. I wish I could be down there, but then I wouldn't be here with you guys covering the draft. So, just wow, what an event. This was a lot more crazier than the Vegas one. I can't completely remember how the Vegas one went, but pretty crazy. We are going up live now to the Space Needle for our next pick. This is going to be interesting, in which we saw GM Ron Francis raise the flag on top of the Space Needle this morning, and you can see that very flag right now if you're watching the broadcast. This is very interesting. And they're sitting on top right there in the glass panel view. They're overlook. And if you actually go to the bottom of the Space Needle, there's a whole entire glass floor you can see down, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, man, it was very, very, very solid picks here. I'm gonna just kind of listen in here for a minute and see where the Seattle Kraken go. The Philadelphia Flyers are next. And they select Carson Turinsky. Kind of another unexpected pick as well. Wow. I mean, I thought they were going to pick James Van Riemsdyk. And they went Carson Turinsky. Wow. Interesting pick. Another young guy, 23 years old, forward out of Philadelphia. 82nd overall pick, third round of the 2016 NHL entry draft. If you look at his career, not all too much going on, but he got called up last year, and so wow, just very interesting picks here. They're kind of going left when everybody expected them to go right here. So these picks are really, really starting to form. You see there's some veteran leadership there, but you also see that he's forming a very, very young team, which is what you want to do. He's going straight at it. He's building the team he wants to see. He doesn't want to wait on any other potential on any other older players to play out. So he's going to just go directly young with his picks, and that is awesome. I told you guys from the very beginning, think Carolina Hurricanes. Do not think Vegas Golden Knights. What happened with Vegas is a once in a million lifetime chance. You will never ever see it again, just because there hadn't been an expansion draft in almost 20 years. The last time there was an expansion draft was 99 with the Atlanta Thrashers before the Vegas Golden Knights. So the teams had forgotten a little bit of the rules by then. So just a couple of things to keep in mind as we go along here with these picks. And we are going to announce another pick here for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they select Brandon Tanev. And he's coming out live on stage right now. Very interesting pick. Very interesting pick. A little bit of veteran leadership there. 29 years old from Pittsburgh. He was undrafted, but his career points are pretty solid, man. 92 points, 47 goals, 50 assists, coming out of a Pittsburgh Penguins team that was just absolutely loaded with talent. Before then, he was with Winnipeg as well. Kind of had a little bit of time to shine, but was very hidden with that Pittsburgh team. You got Malkin, Crosby. You got a ton of guys that were there with those that he wouldn't necessarily even got a chance to play his position of left wing there in Pittsburgh. So it's gonna be very good. Pretty big guy though, 6 foot, 180 pounds, pretty physical, pretty physical. But it'll nonetheless a very solid pick for the Seattle Kraken. I mean, he won an NCAA championship at Providence in 2015, and he's led his team in hits for the past 4 seasons. So he's a very physical guy, enforcer on the ice. He's going to make sure that that players stay protected, quite honestly. So very solid pick by the Seattle Kraken again. Looks like we may have lost Jake here for a minute, but hopefully he comes back, man. I need my partner in crime, Jake. If you're listening, you're watching, man, come back on. We want to hear from you. You want to see you. And we're going to have another pick here from the Washington Capitals, which is going to be very, very interesting. And they're going to select Vitek Vanichev, another goalie, which is going to be Vitek Vanacek. Backed up Holtby there for a little bit. Only 37, or I'm sorry, he just got called up. Excuse me. Nice, solid backup option, though. 908 save percentage. Goals allowed average is 2.69. So he's only played 37 games, only had 1 year in the NHL. Young dude from the Czech Republic. We all know how good goalies were in the Czech Republic. And with that being said, looks like they're going to take a break here in the draft, and so are we. Please stay around with us, guys. We got a lot more draft coverage coming, and we will be right back. All right, make sure you guys follow all of us here on the Spotlight Sports Network here. We got a whole bunch of stuff. We got a whole bunch of merch, everything that we have lined up for you guys. Links are always in the description. If not, you can always go to our social medias too and find them there. You can also check out these little things down here and here. You find all of our social medias here. We are live on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook Live, as well as Periscope. You guys can catch us there. I do about 2 to 3 videos a week, and I do a live show every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So with that being said here, we welcome you back here to our live coverage of the 2021 NHL expansion draft. The Kraken, I believe, still probably have about 15 or so more picks to go. But they are definitely rattling through it as we are joined back live here on the draft. If you are watching it, they are about to announce another pick as we come here. Oh, now they're going to release the home opener details. The October 23rd is going to be the first home opening game for the Seattle Kraken, and the opponent will be it's going to be the Vancouver Canucks. Trying to start the rivalry there. We'll see. I don't think the Canucks are going to have nearly a competitive team as the Kraken will, but so let it be written, so let it be done. What's going on, BL? How you guys doing? Yes, they did get a pick from Philly. Key. They picked, I believe, they picked a young set. I forget who they picked. Good Lord. Let's see. I'm going to look it up right now. Let's see here. So from the Philadelphia Flyers, they took Carson Terwinski, a left winger. I thought they would have picked James Van Riemsdyk, but they didn't. Now we're showing shots of what is going to be known now as Climate Pledge Arena, which is formerly Key Bank Arena, but interesting little factoids about this arena. It is going to be the first carbon emission-free arena ever in the world. Everything in there is going to be all natural, organic. Nothing's going to be really additive to it. And all the electricity runs off solar panels. And they selected from the Arizona Cardinals, the Arizona Coyotes, Tyler Pitlick. Another solid young centerman here. 29 years old, kind of getting there. Undrafted here, but his career kind of solid here. 47 goals, 37 assists, 84 points. Has kind of bounced around in the minor leagues, or kind of bounced around in the NHL. You know, he spent a couple years in Dallas, 3 years in Edmonton. Had his highest year with Dallas, but very solid pick. We all know that Arizona Coyotes team is chock full of young players. So we will. This is a very interesting pick, and now it looks like they're bringing out Gary Payton and Sean Kemp from the Seattle Supersonics to make the next pick from what appears to be, I believe, the Chicago Blackhawks. So this will be a very interesting pick as well. A very, very interesting pick as well. Yeah, so the next pick will be for the Chicago Blackhawks, then the Colorado Avalanche, then the Dallas Stars. So those are the next 3 picks in that order. It'll be very interesting to see who they're going to take from the Colorado Avalanche, as we are now joined again by Jake Silva. Jake, buddy, I know. What's up, Cincinnati crew? Thank you for
Yeah.
coming to our coverage here. Thank you for all of our listeners, watchers, however you're watching. We are doing good. It's been a very solid draft so far, Cincinnati crew. Gary Payton and Sean Kemp are on stage right now, about to announce the pick from the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's going to go Chicago, Denver, Dallas. I'm sorry, Chicago, Colorado, Dallas in the next 3 picks in that order. So it's going to be very interesting to see who they take from the Colorado Avalanche. A lot of people are suspecting that they're going to take Jonas Donskoy, but we will see. Because everybody's so certain that they're going to take Gabriel Landeskog, and I don't think Hockey PewDiePie is going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, because you think of a guy like Jonas Donskoy and stuff like that, and even what he's really contributed with the Colorado Avalanche, even with such a high-powering scoring team. I thought he fit in very well. I mean, even looking at him and Nazem Kadri and a couple of others that had come under this group, I think Jonas Donskoy. I think Jonas Donskoy will definitely plug himself in if he is selected for Colorado and really kind of give him like that upper juice. And Yanni Gourde, here's what's funny about that is that when you put in Donskoy, Yanni Gourde is going to be very familiar with that style of speed, and then not to mention that style of play, because that's even just as similar as Tampa Bay and Colorado have really displayed it on offensive sides.
And with the pick from the Chicago Blackhawks, they picked the second cousin of Joel Quenneville, John Quenneville. So nice. As Sean Kemp butchers the absolute name of the pick from the Colorado Avalanche, the Seattle Kraken do pick Jonas Donskoy from the Seattle Kraken, or from the Colorado Avalanche. Nice solid pick again. Nice solid pick. But yeah, they picked Joe Quenneville's second cousin. Very interesting.
Yeah, John Quenneville. I mean, you think of the Quennevilles. I mean, they're very familiar names right there. Obviously, the Chicago Blackhawks winning 3 Stanley Cups in 5 years was a team that was so solid. But John Quenneville, as we talk about, a youngster that's got a lot of real good history behind him, but another guy that I think could really be such a great asset for the Seattle Kraken moving forward. And then, as we mentioned, about Jonas Donskoy with his speed, he's a guy that is really willing to be lethal. He's a guy that looks to kind of dig in, plug himself in any way that he can. I think these were 2 real good picks, Donskoy being at least the ace in the hole, but I think this is going to be very exciting to watch this offense really work itself.
I mean, with Donskoy, man, 186 career points, almost 400 games played. I mean, we all know what the kind of legacy that the Avalanche have with those young Finnish defensemen. I mean, Mikko Rantanen also being one of those as well. So yeah. It's a pretty big precedent of a pedigree that the Colorado Avalanche have set for the entire league, and put Finland on the map, quite honestly. So.
Yeah, very much so.
Very, very much so. The Dallas Stars pick has been submitted. I missed the name somehow, and I don't know why I did that. Jamie. Oh, good God. I'm having a hard time pronouncing his last name. Oleksiak? Jamie Oleksiak? Is that how you say that? OLEKS.
Jamie Oleksiak, yep.
Yeah,
Oleksiak.
Another defenseman, 6'7", 255 pounds. That dude is an absolute tank. Good God. Wow. 28 years old. He was the 14th overall pick in the 2011 entry draft. 24 goals, 48 assists, 72 points. But, I mean, look at his PIMS, 290 PIMS for his career. This guy is an absolute enforcer on the ice.
Yeah, this is a guy that, as I mentioned before, almost kind of similarly as maybe a player to really kind of get familiarized. Might not be taller than him, but definitely got a play style similar to his. Definitely Zdeno Chara. The fact that, at his size and even just being as an enforcer, This guy
Yeah.
comes in, Alexiak, in a defensive-minded Dallas Stars team, as we mentioned before, that he comes in, and even with the defense that Seattle has implemented, that's another guy that's going to come in and basically give you body shots, give you a little bit of some checkups here and there, and is really the guy you trust that's going to shake up the game and at least shift the tables to where it's going to be pressure on the opposing side and it's going to be comfortability on Seattle's side.
Yeah, thank you, Cincinnati crew, for that subscription. Key, I'm learning with you. We're learning together. It's okay. Jake's here to help us out, man. He's here to help us out with these names, thankfully. Because if I didn't have Jake, I would panic. I would have completely butchered that.
Oh, so, man. Baseball names, hockey names, I mean, you name it.
And so from the Minnesota Wild, the Kraken have select Carson Soucy, 6'5", 211 pounds defenseman. Another kind of enforcer, but a little bit more of an offensive defenseman as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Carson Soucy's play this past year. And you think about a team that really made a huge impact. I don't think any of us saw the Minnesota Wild get to as far as they did to getting into the Stanley Cup playoffs. But Kirill Kaprizov was such a huge pick for them, a rookie of the year. But on top of that, the defensemen, as we note, Matt Dumba, Eunice Brodin, and a lot of people kind of thought, Nick Bjugstad was going to be the guy that they were going to pick. But I actually do like this Carson Soucy pick. I think this is a guy, as you mentioned, offensive defenseman. He's a guy that actually could utilize both sides 50-50. So learning that, knowing how defensive and scrappy Minnesota was, and to bring that to Seattle, watch out, man. I think that is going to be probably one of the biggest key components for Seattle's defensive arsenal.
Yeah, now we have newly named head coach David Haxtell up on the stage, getting ready to announce the new pick. As we all know, was a former head coach in Philadelphia. Then he moved on as an assistant head coach with Toronto. Now he has landed another head coaching gig, another crack at a head coaching gig here in Seattle. Haxtell has kind of that reputation of being a little bit hard on his players, but new beginnings and a little bit of getting behind that head coaching position, it may change a little bit in philosophy there.
Yeah, you got to have a guy, and especially when you lead by example, like a guy like Dave Haxtell, which, he's no stranger in this league, and the way that he implemented his teams. Yes, I mean, definitely a hard-line guy, but very, very to the point when you think of his coaching method. A guy that's willing to play hard every night at 110% and is willing to work and adjust. I think that's what's going to be so lethal for Seattle moving forward. They may not be as very impactful, but I guarantee you lead them with a coaching style that is pushing these guys hard, that's also adjusting their style of play. That's why it's a plan in place for a reason, because the blueprints are going to show for itself when we see it the second Seattle first hits the ice.
Absolutely, man. I mean, wow, just what a draft though. I mean, if you're a casual fan and you're watching this, you're thinking, well, this was very underwhelming. There wasn't really a bunch of players that everybody said was going to go there. But if you're a true hockey fan, man, you can really, really appreciate these picks and kind of look at it and be like, wow. And to know that this isn't it. They're not done yet. The roster freeze ends tomorrow. So Willen and Dilling is going to get done. Free agency opens up on the 28th, which is just a week away. The draft is 3 days away. By the way, the Kraken do have the second overall pick in. So and who knows how many more picks they're going to acquire from here to there when doing Willen and Dilling with all these players.
Yeah, and here's what people got to realize and understand though too, and this is where they kind of get confused by this. It's called expansion draft. This is not fantasy draft. You're
No.
not up over here to getting at least the so-called best of the best hockey players, whether it's your Vladimir Tarasenko's, your Carey Prices, or a lot of these guys. Because what people got to realize, and even in this business, because most of these hockey players are not really getting paid as much as your NFL, your NBA, and even your MLB guys. So, but when you're smart enough as a general manager, and what we just saw from Ron Francis tonight is the fact that he's utilizing a lot of these guys, and a lot that are basically right in the mid-20s, if not late 20s, but are willing to build on this system. But the other part of this is you also got to think of the style and gameplay, because in this game, it's all about identity. What type of team are you? Are you a speedster, like high-scoring team like maybe a Tampa Bay, a Colorado, or are you kind of a mixture of a very highly defensive-minded Dallas, Minnesota, a lot of these teams? I think this was a really, really good mixture that Ron Francis put together. And I mean, it's only going to get better from here. But as you mentioned, the number 2 overall pick in the NHL draft, that has to make you even more amped up of how bright the future that this franchise now has to look forward into, and as we come into the next NHL season. I'm excited for it, but I think this was very well displayed by Ron Francis.
Well, absolutely, especially with the way you see the NHL going now. Guys are getting slimmer, they're getting faster. The game is becoming more of a skill-based game, more so than just a rough it up, smash them into the boards type game. It's becoming more finesse, as we see that along with in the cases of the World Junior Championships that have gone on, and then also as you see it within the minor league system and that in the Canadian junior system as well. I mean, honestly, going back to the whole, big name picks thing, this is too much risk for him, man. Vladimir Tarasenko's coming off of 3 shoulder surgeries. He's coming off of 3 of them after St. Louis botched him, and Carey Price is staring down the barrel of going through a hip or a knee surgery. And these guys aren't spring chickens. You don't know how they're going to be on the backside of those surgeries. They may turn out fine and everything may be great. But at the same time, also in a flat cap era where you don't know if the cap is going to go up or down, why take a risk like that?
Yeah,
because if these guys aren't the same coming out the backside of those surgeries, you just pretty much have lied to your whole entire fan base and sold them a bill of goods that you are not going to be able to cash in on, really.
Yeah, that's where you kind of call this risky business, because the fact of the matter is, you look at the cap hits on both these players. The fact that Carey Price, amongst the highest to be paid with it, $10 million cap hit. Vladimir Tarasenko, $7.5 million cap hit. And these guys have had histories of injuries on, their injury reports. And so absolutely, it's a big time risk. So playing this out as best as possible, where you're still getting the solid players. I mean, you're still getting the mixtures of speeds and even some guys that can be lethal scorers. But if you took the risk of a big name like Vladimir Tarasenko, who's come off of 3 shoulder surgeries, as you mentioned, so you're not sure if that delivery is still going to look the same as it may have been, in his previous 5 seasons. So I'd say that's definitely risky. And Carey Price was coming off of that knee injury. I know a lot of people want to compare this whole thing to the Marc-Andre Fleury deal, where he got hurt the first year of the season, and then you kind of had a little lightning in the bottle luck with guys like Max Lagacé, Malcolm Subban, and even Oscar Dansk at that point. But aside from that, you took a risk of a big-time guy who gets hurt in the initial season, and then by the time he's back, they flourish to making it into the Stanley Cup final. I don't believe this would have been the case with Carey Price, respectfully, because of the fact of you suffer an injury. Now you don't only have to deal with that, then you got to deal with that $10 million dead money cap hit, and I don't think that's really the impression you want to give off the first year if you're a newly expanded franchise like Seattle.
Exactly. With the next pick has been announced, Calle Yarncrook from the Nashville Predators has been selected. Great selection here. We all know that, Swedish players in the history of the NHL has been there's a long history with Swedish players in the NHL. I mean, this guy, 211 points, 508 games played, 117 assists, 94 goals. I mean, 29 years old, a little bit of veteran leadership, but he is a prolific goal scorer. Great choice at center for the Seattle Kraken.
Well, I mean, it kind of reminds you of another Swedish player, William Karlsson, right?
There
The
you
fact
go.
that you pick up that same kid right there from Columbus. I mean, he came in and that first year with the Vegas Golden Knights took us all by surprise as a centerman to score 43 goals in the first season. Calle Yarncrook has a really good reputation, and the fact that coming out of that so-called Smashville, where they had a lot of really good lethal forwards, Victor Arvidsson, Philip Forsberg, I think this could be a really good under-the-radar pick right here that I think people are going to like in Calle Yarncrook. And the 29-year-old who's got experience as well, being in the Stanley Cup final with Nashville, a lot of the possibilities are right there.
Yep, and with that, another pick has been announced. Vince Dunn from the St. Louis Blues. So there goes your Vladimir Tarasenko pipe dream, everybody. It's not happening. They picked a very good young defenseman, 6 foot, 203 pounds. This guy is absolutely physical. This guy smashes people. And he's a little bit of an offensive defenseman, too. 32 goals, 70 assists, 102 points. Was a 56th overall pick in the 2015 NHL entry draft from Mississauga, Ontario. Kind of reminds me of somebody that I also like and admire with another hockey podcast, Paul Bissonnette from Mississauga, but way better player skill-wise than Paul Bissonnette. But still, man, I mean, what a great pick for the Seattle Kraken. A very young defenseman, 24 years old. He's only 24, and he's putting up those kind of numbers.
Yeah, and you know what? And here's another thing you got to add to the resume for a young guy like Vince Dunn. He learned a lot from one of their former captains, Alex Pietrangelo, before he took that 7-year contract with the Vegas Golden Knights. And you talk about defense, like building to get better.
We're losing
and so
Jake.
I think Vince Dunn is really –
we got you. You're back.
Vince Dunn getting – yeah, I really do think that him coming in to this defensive core and what he's displayed in St. Louis, very, very valuable, underrated pick right there. Even at the age of 24, you're going to get a lot of really good you're going to get great defensive highlights and even some good defensive backup plays when you got Chris Driedger and a couple others for the goaltender position.
And from the Anaheim Ducks, they selected Hayden Fleury. Another Fleury from the Anaheim Ducks. Or from the NHL, they select. Not from the Anaheim. There's also another Fleury for the Montreal Canadiens. But Hayden Fleury, what do you think about him, Jake?
I think about this, and like I mentioned about this before, because they first selected Cale Fleury. But then there was word that they would end up selecting Hayden Fleury as well. And what I like about this, I'm not saying that we're going to have, we're not going to have a historical thing like, the Sedin brothers with Henrik and Daniel Sedin. I don't think we're going to have that. But at the same time, these guys have played around in the NHL for a long time, and not to mention playing as kids. You want to be very familiarized of the system, who you play with. So I thought this was great having both Cale and Hayden Fleury playing on the same ice together. I think it's going to be, I would say it would be one of those favorite stories for Seattle moving forward into their inaugural season.
Probably one of the brighter spots on not such a bright Anaheim Ducks team. So big guy. I don't think he's shown his full potential yet. He's played about 5 years in the NHL. Looking at his statistics here, going through, I mean, it just doesn't look like he's had really a lot of playing time, really. So
Yeah.
not a ton of time to shine, but I'm sure with this young team, if they end up keeping him along with his brother, he'll definitely have a lot of playing time to come.
Yeah, and I think you're going to get the best out of both of them as well because the both of them are very familiarized with each other and their play styles. So sometimes that usually pans out for the better, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, wow.
And we
Oh,
got an
and
up.
I'm sorry, I missed a pick from the Winnipeg Jets. They selected Mason Appleton, another pick that hit for me that I guessed in the top 5 depth picks for the Seattle Kraken. Mason Appleton. Wow, what a selection.
Mm-hmm. Mason Appleton, you call it right there. The Winnipeg Jets, another guy that even in a system like what Winnipeg had going moving forward for them, that's a guy that I think is a very underrated player that you could really utilize as far as the special teams goes and situational hockey. So I think Mason Appleton really does fit this style of play that Ron Francis and David Axtell is really going to love to utilize on the ice.
Absolutely. Had a career high year last year. I mean, 12 goals, 13 assists, 25 points, was a plus 11 as well. So, I mean, those are some really good signs that you like to see from a young center. He really kind of broke through on that Winnipeg team last year. Obviously, that didn't reach its full potential. I mean, obviously, surprisingly, bouncing the Edmonton Oilers in the first round, but ultimately losing up to the Montreal Canadiens. So, I mean, a lot of upside there. A lot of upside. The kid's pretty young, man, 25 years old. I mean, he's still got 5 to 6 good years left in him, and he's only just getting started.
Yeah, only just getting started, like you mentioned right there. Career high year last year, and where Winnipeg, again, it was very interesting to see where Winnipeg was going. The fact that they bring back Paul Stastny, and and you still have some of the young core, but then of course getting rid of the Patrick Laine, their number 2 overall pick after being selected after Austin Matthews in that draft, but initially it seemed to have panned out for themselves to still making the Stanley Cup playoffs, and Mason Appleton being a part of that and having a career high year, that really does put a positive upside for the Kraken.
Yeah, Neil, I hear you, man. What a huge loss for the Islanders losing Jordan Eberle. I mean, that is kind of a big loss. Where do you go from there? I'm sure that the Islanders will be drafting another center. And you also lose a big voice in that locker room as well. You lose one of those leaders, one of those, those natural veteran leadership guys. And it doesn't really mean that much on the stat sheet as much as it means to that locker room to lose a guy like that. Because that's the most important thing. I don't care what anybody says about stat sheets or anything. The room and the chemistry between the boys is really what makes a team go.
Yeah, and you have to think about, with that Islanders team, and and again, there were a lot of toss-ups between him and Josh Bailey, and I mean, this definitely stings more for the Islanders because of being that voice in the locker room, really displaying the leadership. Because of course, you know what you're going to get out of Josh Bailey day in and day out, but to have a voice like that to really lead this team up. The other center that you think of is JG Pacho. Now that means he's got to now be the guy that's going to step up into those lines and to really kind of bounce back that threatening force that Barry Trotz has together, but then also the return of Anders Lee. And that's exactly where, the Islanders, they are really going to miss having Eberle plugged in every day on the ice, but doesn't mean, they can't bounce themselves back somehow, some way for next year if they want to get back into the Eastern Conference Final.
So here we come. One of the most anticipated picks right now, the Calgary Flames. Everybody thinks they're going to take Giordano. We're going to see what they're going to do. Everybody was thinking Giordano, that would be a huge get, but we'll also see as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was interesting because I even have a couple of guys, and the guys that covered the Calgary Flames in the Dome podcast. Great guys. Definitely check them out. but they were anticipating, a little bit of Mark Giordano, a guy 2 years ago was a former Norris Trophy winner, a guy who really impacted for the Calgary Flames moving forward. And they were kind of a surprising team that caught fire, literally. But Giordano, with his leadership and not to mention his defensive mindset, with a great group of guys like Vince Dunn and like a couple of these youngsters, I think Giordano, if he is selected, is a guy that's ready to get to work, ready to at least lead this group to where you're not only going to have two of your best defensemen, you're going to maybe have potentially five of your best defensemen by that leadership.
And he has been selected. It is official. Mark Giordano is selected from the Calgary Flames. What a huge get, man. I mean, 509 career points for a plus 101. That is insane. Almost 1,000 games played. Only 37 years old, too. He's still got 2 or 3 good years left on him. I believe his contract is only for 1 more year, right?
Yep, 1 more year that he has left on that contract with Calgary.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see what it turns out. It's definitely going to be kind of a prove-it year for Giordano with the Seattle Kraken, because if all goes well, they might sign him to a 2 or 3 year extension. They're not going to want to go really too deep on an extension, but it's definitely kind of a prove-it year for Giordano. And I mean, what bigger stage than a young upstarting team to prove your leadership and to become potentially the captain of this team?
This guy that I could literally see as being one of the runners-up for the Marc Messier Leadership Trophy. A guy that I think comes into a young core team.
He already won one of them last year.
Yeah, he won one. Yeah, he won one of them. So you know exactly what you're going to get in front of you. So to lead this team to being probably one of the most dominant defensive schematic teams in the NHL, I think really does make it a bigger picture than what you'd see on it. So I think Giordano is really going to make it work. And I'd say something like more along the lines of, almost like a Derek England type, that a guy that, he's willing to play hard, but he's also someone that can be a voice in that locker room to get these guys straight and make the adjustments needed to get you guys back into the game with 3 periods you got to play. So I truly think a lot of that leadership is going to be right there upon his shoulders. This is going to be exciting. And I think some of these guys younger than him are going to be excited to see him in the locker room and to be willing to learn from him moving forward.
Especially the Fleury brothers on those back lines over there. They're going to be absolutely amped to have Giordano in that locker room leading them on.
Funny thing of it is, one of the Fleury brothers has played in Calgary before. So he knows what Giordano is capable of. So, a little familiarity there.
There's a lot of 6 degrees of separation here between this whole entire team. I mean, obviously, because everybody's been around the league and, between juniors and the NHL, everybody bumps into each other at some time. It happens. Yeah. People just know people, and the players know players, coaches, all that stuff. So it's all intertwined somehow, which is amazing, though, because at least you're just not starting with nothing. So right now we have Seattle Mariners outfielder Kyle Lewis on the stage to announce the picks from the Edmonton Oilers, and they picked Adam Larson from the Edmonton Oilers. Another suspected pick that we all thought was going to happen. But Adam Larson, what a get. What a get. Another Swede.
Yeah, and not only that, another thing to add on, because Adam Larson, as we mentioned, was going to be signing a 4-year extension with the Seattle Kraken the second that he selected. So, I mean, it made it happen. And Adam Larson, I thought, really had a terrific year with the Edmonton Oilers, and despite the way that things went in the Stanley Cup playoffs for them. But I thought he was one guy, along with Darnell Nurse, that really stepped up in a big way. Larson's really going to be a guy that comes in a little bit of like, a middle-of-the-pack type guy that Seattle could really love to input into this lineup moving forward.
137 points in 603 games. We have 3 teams left: LA, San Jose, and Vancouver. LA's announcing their pick right now. And they're selected Curtis McDermott from the LA Kings. That is very interesting.
Yeah, Curtis McDermott. I mean, ultimately the Kings right now are in a position where they're looking to revamp and reload and hoping to get, competitive to get back into the Stanley Cup playoffs and even be a threatening force in the league. Because you think about it, they got they had the Victor Arvidsson trade that they literally traded him for nothing. And then on top of it, you're getting young guys like Quentin Byfield, Alex Iafallo. So having, McDermott in the middle of this doesn't really, hurt them much, but at least keeps them in the ball game to maybe getting a good name in the offseason.
Yeah, I see him more of as like you. I see him kind of as more of a trading piece, probably somebody to just throw in on top of a trade to get potentially a better player.
Yep.
And so it looks like they're going to announce. What did I say? I said LA, San Jose. So San Jose pick will be announced next. Excuse me. Jeez, can't talk today. Let's see. Alexander True. Wow.
Yep, Alexander True is officially coming to Seattle.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there were
Go ahead.
There were a lot of really, really positive things they've said about Alexander True. A guy that, youngster for San Jose. I think this guy could do some serious Seattle Kraken in the near future. But wow, what a pick. We kind of anticipated seeing a little of this, but man.
Not only that, he played with the Seattle Thunderbirds in his junior hockey. So, I mean, he's got some roots here. A little bit of familiarity there.
Yep, got some roots coming back home to Seattle. What an exciting moment it must be for True. And I'd say this, he'd be an underrated player that he might have a potential breakout season in the inaugural year.
Absolutely. Still only 24 years old. Last pick from the Vancouver Canucks is set to be announced. After that, we will be wrapping it up and sending it all out. I mean, wow. I kind of like that the list was submitted. I said it earlier, Jake. I like that the list was submitted and they're just rattling them off. So this isn't like a 3-hour, painstaking event. I really, really like it. So Jerry Bruckheimer is up on stage right now announcing the last pick. As we all know, one of the most revered directors in film. But yeah, man, just what an event. And it feels like it all just went by so fast, even though it has been over about an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I mean, these were kind of some obvious picks that Seattle had made some conversations with. And in a lot of them, I'm sure a lot of people were kind of surprised at the fact of, well, Vladimir Tarasenko's not getting moved from St. Louis to go to Seattle. Instead, they take Vince Dunn in a safe way. And the fact that the San Jose Sharks, you got Alexander True, who's going to be, one of their homegrown players that really can set the tone for him. And then the Hayden brothers. What an event it has been. And like I said, how established that this is going to be such a defensive-minded team. I do not think this will be a team easily to stomp on, because not only will it be the inaugural year, but think of the names you got right there in defense. Mark Giordano, Vince Dunn, and a bunch of these young kids that are going to grow through this defensive schematic. That's going to be a lot harder to try to score goals, if not open offensive opportunities against this team.
Absolutely. The last pick has been announced for the Vancouver Canucks. The final player selected by the Seattle Kraken is Cole Lind. not really much known about him. He only played 7 games last year. Didn't really have nothing to show for it, -4. But highlight is he's only 22, and he was part of the Swift Current Broncos, which we all have known in the past several years in Canadian juniors. They have been a force to be reckoned with. So with that being said, that is the 2021 NHL expansion draft. Thank you for everybody who viewed, who stayed in with us. Thank you, Jake, for coming back with us and helping us out, man. I really, really appreciate it. It would have been a very painstaking process to do it without you, man. And wow, what a team. I'll have some videos up. I'll definitely break it all down for you on Saturday morning on Crossbars and Zambonis. I mean, just what an event this has been. Just wow. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what goes on in the next 2.5, 3 weeks, turning into a month, as the NHL only has 83 days until we start back up with the next season.
Yeah, with training camp, and and of course too with the NHL draft coming up Friday night, it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, this off season, there's a lot of moves to be made. There's a lot of big time names that are out there in free agency, but I truly think that this next year is going to be a one of a kind. I know in the last expansion draft, because a lot of teams were not prepared, let alone kind of anticipating what the Vegas Golden Knights were going to do that first year. But from what we just saw from the Seattle Kraken this year, I think you're getting an idea that they want to be defensive-minded first, because they see the speed, they see how lethal some of these shooters can be. And I think if you have the right defensive guys that understand the play style, that understand the blueprint written, that Dave Haxtell will have, I think this is definitely going to be a team. They're going to get their forwards. They're going to get their offense rolling. But I think they look at it as, let's take a back seat with scoring for now, and then build upon our future, but also be defensive to where – right, and think about it. You want to be keeping games close to about 1 to 2 goals instead of it being blown out by like 5, 6 without a really good defensive team. So I think this was really smart by Ron Francis making these moves. And like I said, October 23rd, the second that those doors open in that arena in their first opening night against the Vancouver Canucks. And you want to know what's also interesting? I just got word that the Vegas Golden Knights home opener
is the Seattle Kraken. Yeah, they announced that as well. Absolutely. That's going to be very interesting.
Isn't that going to be something?
That's going to be something.
So
that's going to be something.
Yeah, 2 of the newer recent
expansion
franchises going squaring off. Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Papa chair up, get some popcorn, and enjoy the show, because I think that is going to be a lot of fun to watch moving forward. But yeah, home opener on the 23rd of October against the Vancouver Canucks.
I'm going to try and be there.
I don't even think Seattle fans can contain themselves. They're excited for this.
I'm excited. Look, man, I looked at early ticket prices for the preseason games that were going on down my street. They're basically $100 a pop. I said it's not worth it because it's a preseason game. That doesn't mean, quite honestly, nothing. But I am probably going to be shelling out for that home opener. I plan on being there. I want to be there. I don't know if I can be there. But I'm going to try so hard to be there because, money, that's the thing. It is a Saturday. I do have it off. I plan on being there. I want to be there. But with that being said, to your point with the whole defensive stuff too, Jake, we saw how important defense is with both the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Vegas Golden Knights, as they exhibited probably one of the most impressive physicality displays within the playoffs and how much that mattered. So it's kind of no surprise that Ron Francis kind of built this team that way. And so like you said, maybe a couple defensemen get moved, but I don't think, besides a couple defensemen that were like the really young picks that were just kind of picks, I don't see any of the solid defensemen going anywhere. The Giordano's, the Flaherys, all those guys, I don't see those guys going anywhere, but I do see them making a lot of movement with their forwards and their centers to kind of upgrade on the goal scoring and running the offense through somebody through both free agency and the draft. So
yeah, and that's why I mentioned, how important defense can be, because the other thing of it is we saw that, and I hate to bring it up with, the Vegas Golden Knights against the Colorado Avalanche, because the Avalanche are such a fast, high-scoring, high-powered
but they're
team.
not physical.
But if you can't, not physical, and that's where I think what Ron Francis wants to display is he wants to display a good balance of great defense, not to mention puck control and puck passing skills, but at the same time, get physical. Get in these guys' heads. Find a way to pull them out of their rhythm, and then that way then it shifts the tables to where now the offense can now start to get, to kind of go up and be lethal on the offensive side of the ice and then be able to win big-time matchups like that.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, Jake, I appreciate you joining us, man. It's been one hell of an event. I will have a lot more videos. And like I said, every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, I am live on Facebook, Twitter, or it's not Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, and YouTube. Jake is also live every Monday and Wednesday night. You can catch him on the Snake Sports Talk Show. We are done and out of time. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it, and we will see you down the road, sir.
Absolutely. See you guys, and definitely tune on to the show tonight as we will be recapping a little bit of this expansion draft and even talking a little bit about Giannis and the Bucks and their magical season and winning the NBA Finals and so much more. So definitely tune in on the Snake Sports Talk Show tonight.
All righty. See you later, guys. Thank you.